Okay, I'll hand it off to Nate. Thank you.
Yeah.
This meeting is being recorded.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Group meeting for Wednesday, September 20th, 2023 as part of the Baltimore Regional Transportation Board. Welcome everyone to the meeting. I'm Nate Evans, the chair of the committee. And Charlene, can you do a roll call for member jurisdictions?
Andy, we'll start with City of Annapolis.
Present.
Anne Arundel County. Baltimore City.
Hi.
Hi, John. Baltimore County.
Here.
Carroll County.
Here.
And Harford County.
Hello, good morning.
Morning. Howard County.
Hi, Chris Eatoff is here.
Queen Anne's County. Maryland Department of the Environment. Maryland Department of Planning.
Hey, good afternoon.
MDOT, Maryland Highway Safety Office.
Good afternoon.
And MD is here, just having trouble with the audio, so we've got that recorded. Thank you. MDOT MTA.
Here.
MDOT SHA.
This is Barry List for SHA.
MDOT TSO. Okay, that's everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Charlene. Now we'll move on to our second agenda item with the approval of the July minutes. The minutes were sent out in advance of the meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Thanks, Chris. Do I hear a second?
Second that. Annapolis.
Thanks, Eric. Were there any comments on the minutes that were provided?
We did not receive any comments.
Okay. No comments received or motioned here, so all in favor of accepting the July minutes, say aye, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. The meetings are adopted. Meeting minutes are adopted. Okay, moving on to our third agenda item, we have Emma Blondin from the District Department of Transportation, who's going to join us today to talk about their tactical safety improvements doing short-term quick build projects in the district. Emma, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name is Emma Blondin, and I'm a transportation specialist with DDOT in Washington, D.C., so your neighbor to the south. I'm going to be presenting today on some of our programs, some of which to identify locations where we put in tactical safety improvements, and then looking at how we upgrade them. So I'll quickly go through the project background, looking at how we identify locations for upgrading, what that upgrading, or excuse me, identifying locations for tactical installations, looking at how we do the installation, and then how we upgrade to permanent. So first, what is a curb extension? Curb extensions are something that we put in a lot of locations because they provide a variety of safety benefits for pedestrians and all roadway users. They shorten the crossing distance that pedestrians have to take. They reduce motorist turning speeds as they take that turn, and they increase the visibility between motorists and pedestrians. And you can see on the right here an example of a tactical curb extension, which is where we put one in with paint and flex posts, and then below that a permanent one that's built out in concrete. We use tactical safety improvements in general and curb extensions because we're able to realize the safety benefit quicker, and it improves the planning to construction timeline, which I'll talk a little bit more about shortly. And it also provides us an opportunity to right fit the designs and make changes to the designs before we go in with a permanent installation. So we have these safety and mobility studies, which we do in all different areas within DC, at our smallest local level, where we look at locations on neighborhood streets that can benefit from safety improvements. These are quick, short studies where we recommend a variety of safety improvements, mostly at the intersection level. With each study, we look at 40 short-term recommendations that we implement within 3 years. 10 of those we implement during the study. And then a fun extra benefit is that 5 of these immediate installs that we put in during the study, we work with local artists to install murals within those curb extensions. And these are all, quick build pieces. So we really message these studies as ways to quickly improve safety along these local streets. These aren't going to be, large visioning studies. These are quick studies that identify, needs within our streets that we may be able to come back later and upgrade. So they're all, created to be tactical installations. Some of them were able to go straight to concrete, but for the most part, what you see here is what these recommendations end up being. Flex post paint. We use modular speed bumps, signage. One of the big things is bringing all of these intersections that we touch up to standards. So that's making sure that our parking is 25 feet from the intersection. So we're daylighting the intersections. We're making sure that we have all the ADA ramps we need, high visibility crosswalks, and other pieces that are within our design and engineering manual. And so incorporating the tactical installations in our planning process allows us this extra step. Our kind of looking back at what we used to do, it goes planning, design, and construction. And from your original plan that you do and kind of the community engagement, it can be 3 or more years before you actually get to installation. And so by incorporating the installation and the design piece as part of the planning process, we're able to get to, implementation focused planning. We had quite a few years where, we did what we called livability studies, and we had a huge issue with actually implementing our plans. And so these safety and mobility studies are formed around making sure that we are creating plans to be executed. And part of that is, using these tactical materials and these quick build methods as part of our planning process. And so this is an example of one of the intersections that we identified through that project and we implemented during the project lifetime. So this is an intersection that's 3 lanes of travel in one direction, and you have a cycle track on the left side, and it's an uncontrolled crossing. So we were able to, create some more safety benefits. In the intersection, we added puppy tracks for the cycle track. This cycle track is one of our oldest ones in the city, so bringing that up to standard and providing, more signage, which you don't necessarily see in this image, and then curb extensions to shorten that distance for pedestrians to cross. And then this is another intersection. We have a lot of not necessarily teed up intersections because we have lots of avenues that separate out our grid. One of the key things we do is try to tee up the intersections, which you can see here. Kind of one of the main things that helped us succeed with these studies is incorporating the design process in that planning. So when we, found a consulting firm. We found one that could help assist us with the planning and the design. And so as part of the deliverables for the safety and mobility study, we had them develop plans that we could pass off to our contractors when we were ready. And that allowed us, so this one we were able to install because we were, as an agency, going and repaving this street as part of our asset management process. And so as we go and repave it, we had the plan ready. And so we were able to execute immediately and upgrade this intersection because we had the plans ready to go. And I think that's one of the main reasons we've been able to implement these so quickly, is just kind of being one step ahead in the planning process. And so you can see here the before and after. This is actually an example that a resident had brought to us, that, this is a park, this is an NPS park that didn't have a sidewalk next to it. And so we were able to do a tactical sidewalk, and almost immediately people were using that rather than the cycle track to access the park. And so after the safety and mobility studies and we install these tactical safety improvements, we realized, as we go to the community and we install these, we always say that we'll come back with a, when we come through with a capital project and harden these tactical safety improvements. But the reality is most of those streets don't get capital safety improvements because these are local streets, local intersections. And so we realized we needed to find a systematic way to identify the locations that we could upgrade and upgrade them to concrete. And that's our Vision Zero hardening program. You can go on to the next one. And this is kind of some of the things that I've already mentioned, where we identified, we have over 400 locations where we've put in these safety improvements. We know that they provide the benefit, but we're getting more and more community concern over the maintenance and the longevity of these. As you can see, some of these flex posts have seen better days. And so being able to find a systematic path for upgrading locations, something that we kind of started tackling in the past couple of years. It was also brought to us through the council. So we are required to identify these locations, provide targets, and report on how many locations we upgrade. So this includes, upgrading not permanent or typical bike lanes to protected bike lanes, as well as we have bus islands that we use, where we have both buses and bikes on the same corridor. And so basically it's really about what materials we're using and how we can upgrade them from temporary materials to more permanent ones. And so in 2022, we applied for TAP funds, the Transportation Alternative Program, to do a study to identify how to upgrade these locations. So we really looked at the methodology and how to upgrade, how to identify locations that could really benefit from the upgrading. And then they're also assisting us in developing concept designs for some of those locations that raise to the top of our list. And so the site selection for identifying the top locations. So like I said, we have over 400 locations. Each of these intersections gets a score that's based 50% on the need for safety improvement, and then 50% on kind of the benefits that safety intervention will have for being hardened. Right, the safety benefit is already there, but what locations will benefit from us making that concrete? And these next ones we can go through quickly, because this is just kind of explaining the prioritization score. So we looked at state of good repair and pedestrian exposure. If you want to go to the next one. So state of good repair, this is really like which locations would benefit from getting hardened based on how old that location is, how old that improvement is, and how many 311 requests we get for fixing the flex posts that have fallen over. And then we have pedestrian exposure. This is basically trying to get at like our pedestrian count. Since we don't really have a good way to count that, we looked at ADT, we looked at public transportation. So, if there's a metro stop there, that's a big pedestrian generator. We looked at other pedestrian generators as destinations, vulnerable road user destinations. So that's schools, senior centers, hospitals. We looked at trail entrances, and then lastly, curb to curb width, kind of seeing how long a pedestrian is going to have to cross the travel lanes in order to, get to the other side. And then crash risk is part of the kind of roadway characteristics. So looking at how many lanes of travel are in the same direction, that's kind of getting at the multi-threat crashes, looking at speed limit, intersection geometry, if the intersection's skewed or complex like the one shown here, and then intersection control if it's a signal, a stop, or uncontrolled. And then lastly, looking at both equity. So we have an equity emphasis areas within DC that are kind of identified based on a variety of needs, looking mostly at transportation needs. And then lastly, looking at crash history, angle crashes, which can be addressed most easily by these safety improvements, and then bicycle and pedestrian crashes as well. And so that's kind of once we calculate the score. So this is something that our consultants helped us create a tool for in ArcGIS. We calculate the score for each of the locations within our inventory, and it pops out a prioritized list. And then if you want to go to the next one, the prioritized list we take through feasibility. So we make sure that we're not working on any other studies at that location. So is that intersection part of an ongoing project? If it is part of one, are we able to incorporate the hardening as part of that project, or can we do the two side by side? There are a lot of locations that we've identified for future projects, but we haven't started the planning yet. And so if it's on one of those corridors, we don't upgrade it. We kind of leave that on the list for the following year. And that's because we have a lot of other needs for this curbside space. So, if it's identified for a bike project, we may be putting a protected bike lane, or if it's identified for a bus project, we may be putting a bus lane. Both of those use the curbside, and so we don't want to harden something that could preclude those future improvements. And that's another benefit of us using these tactical safety improvements in the meantime, is that we can get that safety benefit now while we're going through the planning process and design process for something that may use that space later. And then after that, we make sure that the cars can make that turn. A lot of the places where we've put tactical safe curb extensions, it's because we want to visually narrow the road and slow down cars, but trucks may not be able to make that turn. And so we don't have the flex post, we just have the striping to provide that visual narrowing. And so we want to make sure that the vehicles can actually make that turn. And if the location fits these two feasibility categories, then we can kind of move on and identify, you want to go to the next slide, identify the complexity. So we're currently working through a checklist of looking at the complexity so we can understand how many, how complex the project is. What we've learned is these all, we're an old city, and so we have a lot of utilities everywhere, and there's a lot of conflicts. We have different ages of, utilities and signal infrastructure and that sort of thing that we would have to upgrade. And so the complexity is basically seeing how expensive and how time intensive this location would be, and making sure that we're getting the benefit out of it, that the time we're putting in works, right? Like, we don't want to go through an extensive design process for a location where we're only going to be able to put in 2 feet of a curb extension. And so this complexity checklist will help us identify those locations. And then we're gonna we take the top 20 locations, and we basically this is the art piece of it where we identify, a well-rounded work plan for that year, where we may have some that are really complex intersections, and then some smaller ones that, are pretty simple, low-hanging fruit. And then that's what we report on. The locations that don't make it each year, we put back into the inventory, and we rerun this whole process on an annual basis. And so for this year that we're wrapping up now, these are the 8 locations that were identified. And I'll kind of show you 2 quick designs. So one of them is East Capitol Street and 11th Street Northeast. This is right by a large national park and some schools. And so this location gets heavy pedestrian traffic. And so we're looking at hardening, those what you can see there as tactical materials. And so we're going to be tightening up those turns. And yeah. And these are kind of some of the process pieces as part of our design characteristics. So we do have to relocate fire hydrant. We do have to coordinate with DC water and conduct drainage analysis. And then another example is Arkansas Avenue and 14th Street Northwest. And this is one where we're able to put in some bioretention because we're closing a slip lane. And so with some of these locations that have a larger amount of space, we're looking at other ways that we can use that right of way to benefit, whether it's a bioretention or it's working with our park service to facilitate, maybe it's just benches, maybe it's a small park. And then we're also providing a pedestrian refuge across Arkansas Avenue and really tightening up these lanes. And these are kind of the similar design characteristics that we have to go through. This one we are having to include upgrading some inlets. And so that's one of the things that does increase the time and expense of these projects. That's all I have for you. I'm here if you have any questions. If you have any questions, you can also reach me at my email, which is on the screen now. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. Do we have any questions from our audience today?
Yeah, this is Tanya. I have a question. I think I saw you at the APA conference, Emma. Were you there giving the same?
I was the same. Yep, this is like the road show here.
Yeah. And I may have asked this question then, so I apologize if you have to repeat the answer. But when I've brought up.
Oh, sorry. I think you muted yourself.
I don't know why I did that. I've never done that before. When I've brought up these painted bulb outs that are artistic to our traffic engineering office, I immediately get shot down as it being in conflict with the MUTCD. And so I'm just wondering how you've maneuvered that conflict and got your way.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we when we put in a curb extension, we're considering that no longer part of the roadway. So that's now pedestrian space, right? It's essentially the same as if we were to put a concrete one and now it's a sidewalk, except it's still the asphalt. And so by taking it out of the roadway network, we're saying it's no longer subject to the MUTCD. And so we're able to put art in it. I will say that has that opinion had taken some time between us and the engineers to figure out, and FHWA is like still not entirely happy with that response, but that is our justification that we've been using.
Okay. I'll try that.
Eric, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah. I was just curious. I'm here in Annapolis, Maryland, and a lot of these types of projects are generally generated by public feedback, comments from the community that we do here. So I was wondering, within your process, where the public sort of chimes in. Is there a comment period? When you pitch the improvement, and you do kind of like a capture data, that you share with the public for how it's being used or anything like that?
Yeah, so the locations are identified mostly through public feedback. As part of the safety and mobility study, we kind of come to the community with say some data-driven locations. So looking at a lot of those same data points that we look at for upgrading. So looking at crash risk and roadway characteristics, and then we kind of ground truth out with the community. So see if those locations look right to them. Are there any that are missing? Are there any locations there that, they don't think really need safety improvements? And so that's kind of the first place where we work with the community is during the safety and mobility study. And they help identify the locations. We provide feedback periods when we're looking at the designs. And then once this location may be identified for hardening, so maybe it's like 3 or 5 years later after that improvement has been put in, we also go back out to the community and we let them know that this is the location that we're hardening. Because a lot of times, what we may put out is not exactly, we're not hardening exactly where we put in the tactical improvements. We're kind of looking at it with a fresh set of eyes. And so making sure that we're getting community feedback again there as we develop the concept for that hardening.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Thanks.
Anya, did you have another question?
I do, and I think I'm asking this for the benefit of Eric in Annapolis. Emma, I'm, by the way, with Anne Arundel County. How have you, I know there's historic districts in the city of DC, and I know there's also them in Annapolis, and I'm just wondering how you've worked with them, if they've given you any resistance with any of the artwork, and how you've navigated that system.
Yeah, basically anywhere in DC is like within a historic district. So one thing is we have a programmatic agreement where with our historic preservation, our historic preservation office, where we can put in flex posts and paint striping anywhere with just a notification. The artwork in that programmatic agreement, we can put the artwork in without when it's not in historic districts. So that's a very small part of DC where we can just go in and put in art automatically. What typical coordination with SHPO looks like for us is notifying them that we're looking at this location. They make sure we reach out to whichever historic community organizations there are in that area. And we basically solicit their feedback. And we typically, it's like 1 or 2 months, either we get feedback or they don't respond, at which point SHPO will write their letter of support. And that's for the art. It is a similar process for the hardening of the curb extensions because a lot of our locations, a lot of our complex intersections have the triangles have been, the weird triangles have been given over to NPS and are technically, preserved land. And by changing the curb line, the Historic Preservation Office doesn't like that. And so we have to go through a similar process once we go to upgrade it. It generally adds a couple months to our timeline, but we haven't had any issues yet where we haven't been able to put in the art.
Any other questions for Emma? Well, thanks for joining us today, Emma. That's a great
Thanks
presentation.
for having me.
Thanks for sharing what you're doing in the district. Appreciate it. Going down to our next agenda item, we've got Jesse Bilick from Baltimore County. That's going to talk about the update to the bicycle and pedestrian master plan at the county. Jesse?
Jesse, you're muted.
Thank you. Can everyone see my screen share?
We're seeing the presenter side.
All right. Hey, Charlene, you might have to do it if I can't get it to cooperate for me.
No worries, we're happy to help.
Oh, goodness gracious. Yes, would you mind? So sorry, I was going to try to do it myself, but
No worries. Same as that.
just be better for you.
Hey, it's me all the time.
Yeah, my computer decides to work and then not work lately. All right, so hi everyone. In case you don't know, I am Jesse Bilick. I am the bicycle and pedestrian planner here at Baltimore County. We have been in the process of updating our bicycle and pedestrian master plan. And just for some background, we have currently 2 bicycle and pedestrian master plans, one for the east side of the county, which was written by the Department of Planning in 2006, and then one on the western side of the county, which is the Western Bike and Ped Plan that was done in 2012 with a consultant, but also through the Department of Planning. So what we decided to do as part of a new initiative is to make a countywide bicycle and pedestrian master plan, and also include the rural area of the county because that was not included in our previous master plans. If you could go forward, please. So this is the vision statement and goals for our plan, which is to increase safety, ensure equity, expand access and connectivity, enhance public health, protect the environment, collaborate with partners, and create economic growth. And our vision statement is Baltimore County will consist of an active transportation network that is safe and accessible to improve the quality of life and health for users of all ages, abilities, and demographics. Go ahead. This is a slide showing our existing conditions. So currently in Baltimore County, broken down by councilmanic district, which is how we break down most of our data here in Baltimore County. We have 7 councilmanic districts. There'll be a quiz on that later. So there are 22 miles of bicycle lanes, 24 miles of unpaved shared use paths, and 9.4 miles of paved shared use paths, and 2,425 miles of sidewalk. The map on the right here is just a graphic display of our current facilities in Baltimore County, and it also shows the existing facilities in Baltimore City since we surround the city. Go ahead to the next slide. These maps continue with our existing conditions. Map on the left is our existing shared use paths, both paved and unpaved, as well as previously proposed shared use paths from the western and eastern master plans. The map on the right is showing our existing pedestrian facilities, showing crosswalks with the dots and sidewalks in the orangish yellow. So this was our network approach, which was much more data-driven than our last 2 master plans that we did. So We took our existing network with our opportunities and constraints. We used three types of analysis, excuse me, demand, equity, and safety, as well as bike share and complete streets. We added those to our online survey that we conducted with the public, as well as an interactive web map that we had for people to make comments on. We also held 7 pop-up events in each of the councilmanic districts, and we had multiple virtual public workshops. Due to COVID, we did not do those in person. And of course, our draft network aims to recommend a connected, comprehensive, and low stress facility for peoples of all ages and abilities. So the first analysis we used was the demand analysis, which is the inputs were where do people play, where do they work, where do they shop, where do they learn, where do they live, and where do people take transit. And a composite demand score was summarized to show geographic distribution of active transportation demand in Baltimore County. Next slide. So the equity analysis is next, and the inputs were children, mostly demographic information. So children, education, race, income, senior citizens, commuting, and linguistic isolation. Uneven distribution of active transportation infrastructure can provide health, safety, mobility, and economic benefits for some subsegments of the population while increasing hardships for others. Locating these concentrations can be the first step in helping to identify and prioritize those needs. Go ahead. These were the network categories that we came up with. We have trails, which includes unpaved as well as paved shared use paths, complete streets, on-road bike facilities, and long-term projects. Long-term projects are the projects from the previous 2 plans that we have included in this plan as well. Sorry, excuse me. So the recommendations for Baltimore County include approximately 119 miles of shared use paths, and the graphic breaks them down by district, about 70 miles of on-road bikeways, about 33 miles of complete streets, and about 256 miles of long-term projects. So the goal of our recommended on-road bikeway network is to provide connected and accessible biking options for users of all ages and abilities. The connected network with appropriate bicycle facilities is a critical part of achieving the plan's vision of a safe, low-stress network. Roadway modification should be implemented in a way that enhances safety for all modes. Currently in Baltimore County, there are about 15 miles of on-road bicycle facilities, and this plan identifies the 70 miles, as I stated. This section is about the Maryland MDOT context zones. We had met and spoken with MDOT when we were writing the plan to see what their ideas moving forward were for recommended networks, since most of Baltimore County's major arterials are owned and maintained by SHA. So yes, 25% of the overall recommended network and 19% of long-term improvements are located on SHA roads. So that is quite a bit, almost a quarter. So what we were told from them is that they are introducing these contact zones to prioritize safe access for all road users in areas with the highest concentrations of trip destinations. Go ahead with the next slide. So our prioritization approach is to evaluate the network using a data-driven screening process to sort projects by score into high, medium, and low priorities. Review the results within the department as well as with project partners, and then the finalized network segments are completed and categorized into high, medium, and low priority phases, and that is where we got our master project list. Go ahead. Thank you. This slide is the bikeway and trail prioritization. The inputs for this were regional connectivity, intersections with high equity and high demand areas, and the number of bicycle and pedestrian crashes. So for tier 1, which is the highest priority, it's 47 miles, tier 2, 244, and tier 3, 110. The map on the right is showing the recommended bicycle and trail phasing, showing the tiers in red for high, blue for medium, and we have a orangish yellow color for low. We also included in the plan community recommendations that weren't necessarily showing up in our data analysis, but were important, and we had a bunch of public feedback on, so we wanted to make sure we included those in the plan as well. Go ahead. Excuse me. This is the complete streets prioritization. The inputs were regional connectivity, an intersection with high equity and high demand, as well as the number of bike and ped crashes. It's the same layout as the previous slide, with tier 1 being the highest at 31 miles, tier 2 at 74, and tier 3 at 10. Sorry, excuse me, I'm having allergy issues. Pardon me. So for the pedestrian priority areas, we use prioritization inputs such as sidewalk gap closure, the intersections with the high equity and high demand, as in the previous, the presence of dangerous roadways, and the number of pedestrian injuries or fatalities. The pedestrian priority areas are shown on the right-hand side on the map, being low being the green, medium being the orange, and high being the red. This slide shows our implementation goals for the plan. The first being to expand access and connectivity. Our annual goal will be to complete planning or design phase of at least one tier 1 project. Design and construct at least 6 miles of bikeways and or shared use paths from any of the priority tiers, and to design and construct at least 2 miles of complete streets from any of the priority tiers. The other goals are to increase safety, enhance public health, ensure equity, protect the environment, create economic growth, and collaborate with partners. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Jesse. Do we have any questions for Jesse?
Oh, I did also want to mention that the next steps for our plan are that it needs to be introduced and approved by our Baltimore County Planning Board, as well as by the Baltimore County Council. And then we will have the plan up on our webpage. We also have a story map that is included with the plan, which I can show to folks if anyone is interested. Sorry, that's it.
Thanks, Jesse. Is the plan going to be open for public comment?
The public comment period, we had 2 of them and they're over now.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Jesse, this is Chris.
Hey.
Hi. It looks like predominantly a infrastructure-based plan, at least from what
Yes.
we heard about today. I mean, did it look at other aspects that are maybe not infrastructure-based, whether it's policy or education or programming, or is it, is it mainly focused on infrastructure and improving the facilities?
We do have sections on policy and programming, as well as education. But one of the main priorities was building out the network, so that's what why this plan is so heavily focused on that.
Any other questions for Jesse? Okay, thank you, Jesse. Appreciate it.
Thank you all very much.
Next on the agenda, I'll be sharing about the statewide 2050 Maryland Bicycle Pedestrian Master Plan. Charlene, do you have slides to share? Great. So the draft plan for the statewide bicycle and pedestrian master plan is now available for public comment. It was released on September 8th, just a couple weeks ago, and so it'll be open through November 20th. That is to coincide with the Consolidated Transportation Program tours that MDOT officials are going to do across the state over the next couple months. Next slide. So the bike pedestrian master plan is updated on the 5-year schedule, along with the Maryland Transportation Plan. And the main goal was for every plan that we do, it's just updating and strengthening our policies and practices and tools to really make it safer for people to walk, bike, and get around with micromobility. This plan is different from previous in that we've taken a very data-driven approach to forecasting our bicycle network due to the effort that we did with our bicycle level of traffic stress and documenting our shared use paths. And similar facilities across the state, we were able to do our bicycle network analysis, which then helped to inform areas to make those improvements. And then this plan also aims to be a guide for infrastructure and investments and then any policy changes coming, not only for the state, but then also as a plan to be a sample for our local jurisdictions. So the plan really kind of started last fall with our consultant selection and organizing of our technical advisory group. In January, we started conducting our existing conditions analysis, which I just mentioned, and then over the spring, we did our first phase of public outreach. Over the summer, we started crafting our policy recommendations as well as working with stakeholder groups to help kind of fine tune where those recommendations were going. And so we now have the draft plan that's available for comment through the fall. And then we look to have it adopted in January of next year in time for the General Assembly session. And next slide. So to kind of recap some of the public outreach that we did in the spring, we still found that the public takes those walking and biking trips mostly for exercise and recreation. So while this plan is being put together by the Maryland Department of Transportation, we definitely wanted to look at the recreational aspects of it as well. Fortunately, we had DNR, Department of Natural Resources, was on our technical advisory group, and so we had been coordinating with them, especially on some of the recommendations that were more recreation oriented. Similar to national studies, we're seeing that 2/3 of the population would bike more if they had less traffic interaction, whether it's through the implementation of shared use paths, protected bike lanes. It's that traffic element that's really keeping people from getting on their bikes. And yeah, likewise, a lot of folks wanted to see more shared use paths and protected bike lanes across the state. And next slide. So with that, we crafted a vision based on Governor Moore's transition report and some of the goals that he had outlined in that transition report. And so our goal and vision for this plan is that Maryland will provide safe and convenient active transportation that supports equitable access for everyone. So based on that, we took a look at 5 areas and goals that we could definitely make improvements on for reaching that vision. One of the goals is to improve safety through infrastructure and evaluation. We also want to improve the process by which active transportation improvements are integrated and considered during project development. We want to look at network connections for transitioning both short and long distance trips, and then also provide mechanisms to support equitable and sustainable communities through tools and additional funding. Wanted to hit a couple of the key recommendations that are coming out of this plan. So first is that MDOT as a whole needs to update our complete streets policy. We're in the process of doing that now, and then we're also looking to develop a grant program and some other funding opportunities to help local jurisdictions implement complete streets policies and practices and projects in their jurisdictions. Another key recommendation is to continue to build on the success of the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. The plan lays out where a lot of the corridors need to be state highway corridors that need to be improved across the state. While the PSAP does provide recommendations on that, it's actually going out and implementing it by conducting additional feasibility studies on those recommendations and then getting a lot of the improvements constructed as well. We also took a look at updating our state trail network and state trails plan. Part of our data development and getting to this plan was that we really did a good job at mapping out a lot of the shared use paths across the state. That really also kind of showed that the 2009 plan that the state had developed for the strategic trails implementation plan, most of the key projects in that plan were complete. And so as new trail ideas and networks have developed over those past 15 years, we wanted to take another look to really kind of comprehensively look at the next phase of transportation trails that are on our state's horizon and to put together an updated plan that could more strategically implement those trails across the state. Kind of partnering with that is the idea of a trails team. The trails team isn't necessarily an office, but it's really kind of collaborating a lot of existing staffing positions across the state to more collaboratively work together to get those trails built. Revisiting facility maintenance policies and mandates was something that we heard throughout our public outreach and stakeholder comments. As many people know, the state does not maintain sidewalks along their property, along state roadways, and that has a lot to do with the fact that it's written in law that state highway can't do that. So whether it's in law or in policy, we want to go back and take a look at a lot of those facility maintenance and implementation kind of guides that the state is currently adhering to make sure that we're seeing some more equitable use of resources for both state and local jurisdictions, and just make it easier for a lot of these projects to be implemented. We also took a deep dive into rail banking practices across the state. That's not only, we did that mostly with MDOT, MTA, and DNR, since those are historically have been the main organizations responsible for dealing with rail banking. If anybody knows anything about rail law and rail property law, it's quite confusing. So there's really no two ways that most rail banking projects or rail to trail projects can be implemented. So we wanted to make sure that we were able to do some homework to this and then provide some recommendations to make it easier for the state to pursue rail banking and to implement some of those practices to get more rails to trails and rails with trails in the state. And also we expanded on the bicycle facility selections guidance that was kind of alluded to in the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. We can go to the next slide on that, Charlene. And so the bicycle facility selection guidance that we're providing in the plan is really based on FHWA's guidance, in that we want to take a look at recommending bicycle facilities geared toward each of the target user group that you're looking at. So while it's based on context zones as well, we want to make sure that in those areas where we're going to see, where we want to get more people of all ages and abilities to be, biking for those trips. that's, we want to make sure that we're aiming to lower that level of traffic stress score for each of those areas. And if you go to the next slide, we kind of give a little layout on how we can do that. This is a chart that kind of shows the context zones that we're looking at. Part then looked also with the typical or target user group that we want to go with, and then comparing that with the existing level of traffic stress. And so this gives a general sense of what kind of bicycle facility would be needed under those current conditions to make it more suitable for that target user. Also, throughout the plan, we kind of expand on the process for how we would want to go about selecting those facilities. But I'm going to save it for you all and not bore you with it right now, so you can go online and take a look at the plan. You can go to the next slide, Charlene. So yeah, like I said, the draft plan will be open for public comment now through November 20th, with the final plan being adapted early next year. You can go there to the plan's website at 2050marylandbpmp.com to take a look at the plan. And then at the bottom of each page on the PDF that you're looking at online, you can go into a SurveyMonkey link to leave comments on those pages as appropriate. So yeah, all the comments that we're collecting will be online. And then you can also send, if you go to the next email or next slide, Charlene, you can email me with any comments. You can also send them to the bikepedinfo@mdot.maryland.gov email address. We'll be also collecting comments there. And with that, I will take any questions.
Nate, this is Tanya. Did the plan do any analysis of, progress made since the last plan?
Yes, I should said that in the beginning. So the plan does have an opening chapter where we do talk about the success stories from the previous plan adapted 5 years ago. And then we also have a very extensive existing conditions section that takes a look at both policy and infrastructure, and also provides guidance on a lot of the latest equity analysis that's the federal government's offering as well. So those are kind of the second and third chapter.
Okay.
Nate, does the plan make any recommendations on the types of pavement marking standards or we did a standards document for Annapolis recently, and we're leaning on a lot of the same specifications that you highlighted already. But, I think we're always looking for any other guidance that, we to work with our public works department on kind of what the contemporary standard is, particularly we don't have any green paint in Annapolis yet. I think anything that speaks to that is kind of, and frankly, our public doesn't always understand why, they see green paint in some other places and not in Annapolis and so, but.
So as far as specific standards for the specifications for each type of bike facility, they're not included in this plan, but this plan does make a recommendation for MDOT to update the State Highway Administration's design guidelines that were adapted in 2015. So those are going to be forthcoming over the next couple of years. So that should provide additional guidance for you in the future. This plan really talks more about what type of facility should go in what kind of setting. But as far as the specifics on how you build that, those will be included in the design standards.
All right, that makes sense. Thanks.
Nate, this is Tanya again. I was just taking a quick look on my other screen at the plan. Are any of the maps, like the priority areas or the short trip opportunity areas, are any of those interactive online so you can zoom in?
Yes, so if you're on the website, under the draft plan section, you'll see that we've got a couple of links in there. One is to the draft plan. One is to the Maryland Transportation Plan, which is also open for public comment. And then there's also a link to all those maps online so that you can really zoom in and drill down on those locations.
Great, I see that now. I didn't read down that far.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you. And again, just let me know if you have any questions, and please jump onto the website and let us know what you think of the plan. And I will now turn it over to Charlene to talk about future topic areas for BPAG.
Thank you. So this is a follow-up on a discussion we had at the last BPAG meeting, which we followed up with the survey, and so I'm just reporting back on that, and then seeing if we can have additional discussion about the future topic areas for BPAG. So first I'll present a summary of what the survey responses were. So we sent this out to BPAG members. I think we got 6 responses, so I think we've got more feedback we can get from you all today. But we asked specific items that people may be interested in having BPAG focus on, and then had an open response section as well. So this is a slide of the survey responses. Everyone who responded wanted to get updates on local bike ped complete streets and Vision Zero plans and implementation. So we'll keep doing that, like the Baltimore County bike ped master plan update that Jesse gave. We also had interest in quick build projects and programs. So we had DDOT come today to speak about that, but we can also look and see if we can get additional speakers and subject matter experts to speak on that. We also had 83% said they would like to get updates on state initiatives, like Nate's presentation on the Maryland Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. And we had 83% wanted to see updates on the UPWP projects. So that would be like the preliminary design of Patapsco Regional Greenway, Genesee Southwest Area Park, other projects like that. The interest decreases a little bit for getting more information and outside speakers on the Reconnecting Communities program and the RAISE program. And then we had half of the respondents interested in more information about effective and inclusive methods for public engagement. So next slide. And then these are some of our open-ended responses when we asked, what other things would people like to see BPAG focus on? And this focus could be, presentations during BPAG meetings, or it could be potential UPWP projects that could be submitted. So one of them was a request for a pedestrian inventory of sidewalk conditions, including width, presence of buffers and gaps. And as you know, we just recently did a pedestrian facility inventory, but it does not include width and presence of gaps and buffers at this point. So another request was for a pedestrian level of comfort map, which would require that data that was listed. There is also interest in looking at how to improve ADA access to transit locations and identification of barriers, and best practices for working with railroad companies during planning, design, and implementation. And next slide. We also heard there was interest in following up on the top regional active transportation priorities, including a timeline for construction of major regional projects. Interest in a prioritization tool for projects, so that information can be added in a score provided through a tool. And then project to identify roads for road diets with potential cross sections, including considerations of barriers if they exist. So these are the responses we got so far. So I wanted to open this up to you all and see if there's anything you're particularly interested about that was listed here. If you had any questions, or if there are other elements you'd like to see BPAG focus on in the coming years. And I'll drop some links in the chat. So
Charlene, I was
yeah.
something that the presenter from DDOT, Emma, shared earlier that I thought was intriguing was the legislation that DC passed that I think it was called Safe Streets, something or other. I would be interested in hearing about any policy initiatives that jurisdictions have advanced, whether in this region or elsewhere, that help to prioritize bike and pedestrian improvements or clarify or dedicate funding, or basically interesting, innovative policy ideas that we could learn from.
Okay, got it. Made note of that. Okay. And while people are thinking, I'm just gonna drop a link to the top active transportation priorities map in the summary presentation that was given last year, in case you need a refresher on that.
Darlene, for some of the ideas listed, I'd be happy to help with some of those.
Great, thank you.
We've been making some progress with railroads, so that's something that we could present on in the future.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah, we've I've had limited experience working with the railroads on bike ped projects, and even that realized how complicated it can be. So getting some expertise would be very helpful for everyone, including BMC.
Yeah, we can certainly help with that.
Okay. Did anybody else have any ideas or comments on future topics for BPEG? For the next meeting, we do have the City of Salisbury coming to speak about their Safe Streets for All program grant that they received. So we wanted to get somebody from the state of Maryland who received the funding to come speak, and hopefully they can speak to also funding sources as well on what made a successful application. Michael's got his hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm just a member of the public, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes. One thing that came across my realization just recently, and I can't speak authoritatively to it, but I'd love to see it kind of taken on by this group, is my understanding is that the state of Maryland, in the state of Maryland, there's the personal injury liability standard is contributory negligence as opposed to comparative negligence in most other states. I think my understanding is Maryland is very much in the minority on this. I think it's like maybe only 4 other states have this. And I think it essentially places the burden on vulnerable road users, whether it be pedestrians or cyclists, when it comes to a crash. I think it basically has to do with, even if the pedestrian or cyclist did something minorly wrong that contributed to the accident, then suddenly the maybe the driver is almost like not at fault for the crash, and it places a very large burden on the vulnerable party in any kind of collision or crash. And it, like I said, this is something that I've just heard about like in the past couple of days, so I haven't been able to look into it. But if there's merit to that, and my understanding is that some like WABA and Bike Maryland, they have in the past made efforts to get legislative changes around this, but it's been very unsuccessful. I believe there's various special interests that really don't want to see it changed. I don't know what the details of that are. But it sure seems like if we're very much in the minority in this camp, it really sends a signal, at least from a legal perspective, that the roads are for cars, roads are for drivers, and they're basically put in the pole position when something bad happens. So if this was something that the BPAG could do a presentation on, or somebody could come in and really speak to. I'd very much appreciate that a lot.
Thank you. That was a great comment, and we've made record of that.
Thank you, Charlene.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Charlene, this is Tanya. I had stumbled upon a person that works for Montgomery County, and they have like a capital projects just set aside for quick build sidewalk projects. And I could I sent you an email actually with his contact information.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And that's another thing. If you guys, go to an event and you hear a speaker that's great, or you read an article, I'm happy to reach out to them and coordinate having them share that information with the group. Of course, the main goal is we want to make these meetings useful for you all, and to provide information and coordination that's useful. Okay. Well, we've got a lot of great ideas, so we're not going to run out of topics anytime soon for sure. I just wanted to follow up real quick, the request to follow up on the top regional active transportation priorities, including timeline for construction. So we are planning on basically updating that through the vision for the regional bicycle network, which is currently out as RFP, and proposals are due tomorrow. So we're wanting to act on that through the regional bicycle network project. So just to give an update about that. And I'll drop the link to the RFP location if you all wanted to see the RFP. And I think that's everything then, if we don't have any more comments or questions.
Hearing none, we can move down to our next agenda item for the roundtable discussions. This is just a time for our local jurisdictions to provide a quick update on any of their projects in the bike ped world. And we'll start with City of Annapolis. But before we do, I see that Francine Waters' hand was up.
It is. I just wanted to put in a plug for Walktober and Walk Maryland Day. Registration is now open, and I'll put it in the chat here. But I did want to encourage everyone to consider scheduling a walk on Walk Maryland Day, which is next month, the first Wednesday, and our registration is open for our walk-in-ours, and our guest here is from Strongtown, and Strongtowns will be represented as one of our presenters. So I hope that you will consider joining us for one or all four of the walk-in-ours, and I'll wait my turn to update you on other stuff. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Francine. Thanks for the links in the chat. Eric, update from City of Annapolis.
Okay, thanks, Nate. We continue to move forward on several state-funded bike projects, notably the West East Express, the College Creek Connector, the Hilltop Lane Connector, all funded by the Kim Lamphere program, and the West East Express has two federal grants, the RTP and the TAP. So we're just trying to move those forward. We also got a new grant from MDOT that I'm excited about for our Bay Ridge Bikeways path project, and so that one we're just basically wrapping up the feasibility study that's been done by Tool Design as part of the BMC's Transportation and Land Use Connections program. So really thrilled to be able to advance that project. Our bike share program is still successful. We're linking up with Anne Arundel County now, so it's kind of an expanded service area, but I should say bike and scooter share program. And part of the BMC grant also funded a bikeway standards report or technical memo, I guess is what it's called. I mean, we envisioned it as an appendix to our 2011 bike master plan that Tool had done. A lot has changed in the last 12 years. And so really, we didn't have any kind of standards on the books for sort of when and why certain bike facilities should be implemented. And particularly here in Annapolis, we have so much constrained right of way. It's like we're constantly trying to make these decisions about whether something's appropriate or not. And I think this is going to really help us navigate some of these projects between planning and zoning and public works. And so I'm excited about that. And then finally, over the last 90 days, we've had our draft comprehensive plan out in the city for public comment. And it's got a pretty ambitious transportation chapter with heavy focus on active transportation. So it's gotten a lot of good review and reception. Hopefully we can get that adopted in the near future. That's it for me.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Anne Arundel County?
Hi, everybody. Eric, is that comp plan, are you looking for comments from people like in this group as well, or?
It's not a bad idea. I mean, to be honest, I've gotten a lot of comments just from like our citizens, and MDP circulated to all the state agencies. So we did probably get comments from MDOT, I think. I'm not sure if you saw it, Nate, or it was somebody else. I can't remember, but
yeah, we took a look at it through the clearing.
Okay. So yeah, I think maybe at this point, the 90-day comment period is actually ending tomorrow. So it may be, I'll put the link to our comp plan in the chat in case people are curious. But
yeah. Okay. So in Anne Arundel County, I am so proud to report that we, that we were the recipient, and MDOT announced $6.4 million for a TAP award to construct the extension of the BWI trail spur from Maple Road to the Light Rail Nursery Road station. It's currently in design. And thank you, BMC. We also got $240,000 to continue with our accessibility studies related to safe routes to school and bikeways. We got, thank you, $500,000 for some delineators to put on the roadway that act as a vertical barrier on a couple of locations where we put in a cycle track. We do have a meeting coming up on a somewhat controversial project in Brooklyn Park. It's the Belgrove Safety Improvement Studies, formerly known as the Baybrook Connector, which we're no longer coining it as that. And I am looking to get feedback from anybody on any literature or handouts or data that supports the idea that trails are an amenity and not a liability in terms of crime. So anybody have anything that they can forward to me, I would really appreciate it before next Thursday. It's at 6 at Chesapeake Arts Center. Our Safe Routes to School existing grant for the accessibility studies and the safety training program is moving along nicely. They actually began the safety training program at the first of 8 schools this week, today, Linthicum Elementary School. And if anybody is interested in knowing where those pilot programs are taking place, I have a list I can share. We are continuing with our Vision Zero action plan. We hope to have something put together before Thanksgiving. And Nestor, who's my co-chair, I guess, for the committee, has put together a dashboard that is going to be publicly available probably I think they were aiming by the end of this month, but it might be into October. But it's really neat. It's got, equity layer, higher injury network, crash data, all kinds of stuff that can help the public understand what we're doing. And then we're going to have an internal one as well that'll have more in-depth information about exactly, like location of the crashes and causes. And we are updating our design manual. We're hoping, I think, to have that completed by the end of the year. And that includes an update to the adequacy of public facilities ordinance to include bicycle, pedestrian, and transit in the traffic studies. So I'm excited about that. And that's all I can think of for now.
Thanks, Sonia. From Baltimore City, John Leisman put in the chat that Baltimore City DOT is wrapping up their Wabash Avenue multimodal improvement study, and it's currently in interagency comment stage right now. Next up, Baltimore County. Any other updates?
Jesse had to leave early and didn't leave any updates. Thank you.
Next up is Carroll County.
Hi, this is Claire with Carroll County. Just an update on our two Safe Routes to School projects. One of them should be closing out within the month, and then the other is going out for bid for construction within the week. So those are moving along just nice.
Great, thanks, Claire. Hartford County. Hearing none, moving on to Howard County.
Hi, this is Chris Etoff. We have a couple of projects recently completed and a couple upcoming. So recently completed a sidewalk and crosswalk project on Montgomery Road. BMC actually helped us with that with some before project counts, and been working with Charlene to work on the scheduling the after project counts. So we'll have some good, interesting bike ped count data associated with that project. And then we recently implemented bike lanes through resurfacing on several road segments in Howard County. We have Guilford Road, Gerwig Road, a section of Twin Rivers Road, and Harriet Tubman Road, all recently received bike lanes over the summer. Our next bike lane, on-street bike lane project that we're looking at is on Columbia Road between 108 and 175. We're going to have a public meeting for that segment to discuss the bike lane addition on October 19th is the public meeting. It will be virtual. And so we just started our outreach for that meeting. And then also another upcoming pending project is our Dobbin Road Pathway project. And we were happy and appreciative to receive a TAP grant at this latest round for $4 million for the construction of that project. So that's been working through the design and on various segments using both Maryland Bikeways and TAP funding already. So we're going to be able to finish off that project all the way to construction with TAP funding. Most likely starting next year, but we just received notice on the funding. That's all we have.
Thanks, Chris. Catherine, if there's any updates from MDE, can you put those in the chat, please? And I'll move on down to Maryland Department of Planning.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm filling in for Tina James. She's on vacation this week. We continue to review local jurisdictions' comprehensive plans, which may include a chapter on bicycle and pedestrian planning. The regional planners in our office, as well as the transportation planning staff, provide review and comment on each plan sent to the Department of Planning. And if you would like to look at the comments that we have provided back to local jurisdictions to make these plans, specifically the ones that apply to us here, bicycle and pedestrian plans of a greater quality, you can go to, and I'll leave the link in the chat, planning.maryland.gov/pages/our work/comp plans/view drafts.aspx. Again, I'll leave that link in the chat, but it's good to have eyes on the comments that the State Department of Planning is providing back to local jurisdictions. We are not a regulatory agency. We do not fund. So the comments that we provide hopefully are being carefully thought and hopefully can influence the types of changes that this group and other jurisdictions want to make in terms of providing greater accessibility for all types of transportation users. And it starts back, at least for our work here at planning, at those comprehensive plans and what kind of attention and what kind of focus bike and ped is being brought to the comprehensive planning documentation. So again, I'll leave that link, and that is it for us.
Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I just want to reinforce the comments that MDP puts in, especially on bike ped comments on comp plans, is really exemplary, and we're good to have it's great to have an asset like that taking a look at these future plans. Going to MDOT, any updates from the Maryland Highway Safety Office? It's like Cynthia is no longer with us. MDOT MTA.
I'd say the biggest, most important piece is that we ran into some challenges for the Patapsco pedestrian and bicycle bridge project, but we've reassessed the design and we're planning to move forward with a new alignment that we think will be better. And we're going to be reaching out to a number of the folks, including city, BMC, SHA, for coordination as we move forward with that.
Great, thanks, Patrick. State Highway Administration. Barry is no longer in the meeting as well. And at the Secretary's office, like Francine mentioned, Walktober is going to be kicking off pretty soon. As I've mentioned earlier, we've also got our bike ped master plan that's open for public comment. And as many have already said as well, last week, the governor announced $25.5 million in TAP, rec trails, and bikeways funds were announced to go across the state. You can put a link in the chat to the press release, which then also has links to all of the projects that were awarded. And we also have our next Maryland Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee meeting coming up on Friday, October 27th. That'll be online, and you can find more information for joining that at the MBPAC website. I'll also do it.
And Nate, I'd like to add, if I may,
Sure.
The MBPAC Pedestrian Subcommittee is meeting tomorrow virtually at 10:30. If anyone has not received an invitation, please email me and I will forward the invite. But I hope those who have been invited will attend. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Francine. And updates from BMC?
Thank you. As I mentioned earlier, the vision for the Regional Bicycle Network RFP, the consultant proposals are due tomorrow. So then we'll begin that process of consultant selection. You've gotten some emails from us about that, and we'll have some few more about BPAC's participation in the project. The other thing we have is we now have a online request form for the Regional Active Transportation Count Program. That way you can submit potential count locations at any time as they come up. We're looking primarily at before and after counts. Like Chris mentioned, we did the count before the Montgomery Road improvements were made, and then we're working to schedule an after count to then be able to compare the bicycle and pedestrian volumes before and after the project. We're also, if you have a potential permanent counter location, that can be a good short duration count location to do for 7 days to see if it's worth putting in something to count every day, all day. And then another potential kind of count would be for a safety assessment. But I've dropped that in the chat, the request form. The period of request for this fall is closed. Unless you have an extraordinary circumstance, reach out to me. But we're mostly looking for potential counts for spring and fall of next year. I'm also happy to speak to anyone who wants to talk further about the count program and ways that it could be useful for your jurisdictions. So I think that is all the updates I have. Shane, did you have any updates about Bike to Work Week or anything?
I do not at this time, no.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. That wraps up our updates. Is there any other business for the committee, for the group today?
Yeah, Nate, I forgot to mention, we have a new staff member, James Kitchen, in our office, and he's on the call today. I just wanted to introduce him as a new member, and potentially if he ever needed to fill in so that you all could meet him. James, did you want to say anything about yourself?
No, I've been here working with the county for 5 years or so, do special projects part-time for the county executive, and then in here in transportation as a new member of the team. So excited to be here. Love this kind of work and happy to learn and collaborate with you all.
Great. Welcome, James. Thanks for joining us. Speaking of new staff, we also have our new intern from the University of Maryland. Ibrahim Syed Ibrahimi is joining us today. He's also on the line. Yeah, if you'd like to introduce yourself, Ibrahim.
Hi everyone, my name is Ibrahim. I'm in my Masters of Community Planning program. Happy to be here. I'm excited to be involved in this project. So yeah, that's all of me.
Great, thanks. Any other business for the advisory group? Hearing none, that will bring our meeting to a close. Our next meeting will be on Wednesday, November 15th at 1 p.m. And with that, thanks everyone for joining us today. And that will conclude our meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you. Patrick, are you still on? Patrick McMahon?
Yeah.
I just saw your chat and I wanted to say that I updated that we got 6.4 million for the construction of the extension this year. Yay.
Wonderful.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your support.
Bye, you all.